All right, in this video, we'll be looking at the composition of semen and also spermatogenesis, which is the creation of sperm cells. And then we'll be looking a little bit at regulation of the male reproductive system with hormones. All right, so just a little bit about the composition of semen. Semen is mostly, as you can see, other materials like stuff from the seminal vesicle and other like prostate. And then you have only 10% of the semen is being sperm. And this 10% is approximately 20 to 150 million sperm. The other contents are things like fructose, which is for ATP production. There are chemicals that protect and activate the sperm. There are chemicals that facilitate sperm movement. There are chemicals that neutralize the acidity of the male urethra and the female vagina as well. And so that is the composition of semen. Spermatogenesis. This is the process of forming male gametes. This occurs in the seminiferous tubules, begins at puberty around age 14. The average adult male makes around 90 million sperm daily, and basically makes sperm until they're old, until they die. Basically, there's not a stopping point for males. Basically, there are three steps in spermatogenesis. You can kind of see them there on the right. The first one is the mitosis of the spermatogonium. So spermatogonium are like the kind of like the sperm stem cells. It's a way of thinking about it. And this happens when the person enters puberty. The spermatogonium begin to go through mitosis, which is just basic cell division, creating clones of themselves. And then those spermatogonium then will go through the process of meiosis. And that meiosis begins with this cell called the primary spermatocyte. It undergoes meiosis and splits into two secondary spermatocytes, and then those secondary spermatocytes will split again and create these cells called spermatids, which are round cells. They have a large nuclei, so they're really small cells. Most of it is a nuclei, and most of the DNA in the spermatids are completely turned off, and it's just like a little pellet inside the cell. And then these spermatids are non-motile at this point, meaning they can't swim. They have to kind of go through this maturation. The spermatid will basically elongate and turn into what we think of when we think of a sperm cell, with the tail and the midpiece. So here is what a sperm looks like, and this is kind of the process of spermatogenesis, or the finishing piece of spermatogenesis. So you have the head region here, which contains the nucleus. It also contains this structure called the acrosome, and the acrosome contains enzymes that allows the sperm to penetrate the egg. There is the midpiece, and the midpiece contains all mitochondria, and the purpose there, it's almost like a little motor for the tail. And then the tail obviously is the for locomotion, for moving through the female birth canal. Spermatogenesis from spermatogonium to working sperm cells takes approximately 64 to 72 days if conditions are hospitable. And so they are pushed into that area called the epididymis. And in the epididymis is where these spermatids are pushed into the epididymis, and in the epididymis is where that maturity into a full-on sperm cell with a tail is going to happen. So a little bit about spermatogenesis and the idea of infertility. Infertility affects roughly 1 in 7 couples in our country. And infertility is basically, the idea behind infertility is that low sperm count or ineffective sperm, non-motile sperm, defective, like more than one head or more than one tail. And there are lots of things that can cause infertility. Infertility, interestingly enough, has been in a gradual increase in the last 50 years in our country. There are lots of different things that are said to contribute to this, but there's no real known thing. Environmental toxins, pesticides, herbicides. Other possibilities are things like estrogen producing hormones, like antibiotics, can cause these, which suppress sperm production. Other things that people put into their bodies, like excessive alcohol, marijuana is another one that causes low fertility as well. Any kind of thermal related event, like, I mean, as silly as it sounds, people who spend too much time in hot tubs tend to have lower fertility because sperm production happens at a lower temperature and hot tubs have a higher temperature. And so that causes a decrease in their production. So there are several things that can cause infertility. Looking a little bit at the hormone structure for males, the production of gametes and sex hormones is regulated ultimately by the hypothalamus, and then next by the pituitary gland, and then by the testes, kind of in that order. We talked about this in a previous video. So the hypothalamus releases a chemical called GnRH, which is gonadotropin releasing hormone. GnRH for short is fine for me, which binds to the pituitary gland, and it causes the pituitary gland to release the two hormones, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone is what stimulates the testes to begin sperm production. There is this protein that is started in the male that follicle stimulating hormone starts, and it's called androgen binding protein, or APB, or ABP, excuse me. And it keeps the concentration of testosterone high near the spermatogenic cells, and it promotes spermatogenesis. Luteinizing hormone binds to the testes cells, and it causes them to secrete testosterone, and then rising levels of testosterone trigger spermatogenesis as well. And so basically, the long story short, these hormones released by the pituitary bind to the testes, cause them to produce testosterone, which in turn increases the production of sperm. And then testosterone levels will feed back to GnRH, or feed back to the hypothalamus and turn it off. And so it's a negative feedback mechanism. But this feedback is constantly happening because in males, sperm production is constantly occurring. And so the hypothalamus is always basically releasing this GnRH in regular intervals in order to produce sperm.